Let me ask you something real quick. Have you ever sat down after paying all of your bills, looked at your bank account, and thought, how the hell is this all that I have left?
Oh yeah, but I did everything right. I skipped eating out. I didn't have the coffee, and somehow I'm left with $37. How does that happen?
And maybe that's when it finally hits you. Cutting expenses can only take you so far. It's like you've squeezed your budget dry, and it still isn't enough.
The problem isn't just what you're spending, it's actually what you're earning.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. How to increase your income, whether you've got a W-2 job, you're self-employed, or just hustling to survive.
And we're gonna walk you through the practical ways to grow your paycheck, ask for a raise without feeling weird about it. And we're gonna be sharing some of the best side hustles to start, even if you're starting with no money or no time.
And we'll also be breaking down the psychology of earning more, how to evaluate your worth, and how small weekly incomes could snowball into hundreds of thousands of dollars over time.
So if you're tired of scraping by, if you're sick of feeling like you can't get ahead, this episode is the one for you.
So let's get into it with the FI guys. This is episode 6 of the FI Crash Course, Ways to Increase Your Income. Here we go. Welcome to episode 6 of the FI Crash Course. Today we're going to be talking about ways to increase your income when budgeting just isn't enough. As you may know, you can only slash your expenses so far. But the real freedom comes when you can grow that gap. And that means you have to boost your income. Whether that means you work a 9 to 5 or dream of starting your own side hustle. This episode is going to show you how. And with that, I want to start off with segment 1. Why cutting costs isn't enough today. Budgeting, it's a great foundation, but it won't build wealth alone. There's 2 sides to the equation. And there's a hard limit to how much you can cut. But your income has no ceiling at all. So Dominic, I know we're re-hitting this FI Crash Course. Did you think when we first did this over a year and a half ago when we talked about ways to increase your income? I know that this is your bread and butter. This is where you thrive.
Yeah, no, I mean, I read a study recently and it said that 40% of Americans have a side hustle. And that statistic is insane to me. That's insane to me. It's one of those statistics where it's like, I don't know, come on. I don't know if I buy it. But it's interesting, right? Because it only has arisen because of the lack of money, right? If you were making enough money, well, you really wouldn't need a side hustle unless a passion project, which in my eyes might be a little bit different. Yeah, no, I love side hustles. I think everybody should have one, even if it's just for like some mad money or if it's just for your creativity or just to push yourself or to learn something about something. And, a lot of people have these different skills that, like I might be really good at painting, right? But my main job is, might be something else, right? But I'm a really good painter, interior homes, right? Well, why not share that with the community? Why not on the weekends or on a day off? Like, hey, yeah, I'll paint your kid's room, no problem. Here's my rate and whatnot, So I think anytime you do have a skill like that, I think you should share it with the community, right? Because let me be honest, most people are terrible painters. They're terrible, right? They think it's way easier than it is, and they get going, and it's like, oh, this looks like crap. Yeah, and there's paint all over the carpet. Not ideal. Not ideal at all. But yeah, I believe everybody should have a side hustle, and I believe everybody should work on something creatively. There's that word again. There's that fake word again. I you know me, I love making up words. Webster, give me a call. Put some words in the dictionary. Anyway, but yeah, Chris, I mean, at what point did you ever have a side hustle? Have you had a side hustle, or were you always focused on your main bread and butter at your W-2 or your entrepreneur job?
Yeah, unfortunately, I was always the main hustle kind of guy. I mean, when it came to being an entrepreneur, when it came to learning to grow your own business, grow any of your own thing, that was not where I came from. And I came from a family of get a job, a 9 to 5, work your entire life, and then eventually maybe you can retire and die. It was a lot of mental work for me to get over that hump, to be able to be okay with doing my own thing, being okay with failing, being okay with going into the darkness alone in trying to figure it out. But what I've learned from there is that your income, when you do that, really has no ceiling. When you're working a W-2 job, well, oftentimes they have ceilings, or you have to jump from job to job to job, which is things we're going to be talking about in today's podcast. But what I really want to talk about right now is the true goal of increasing our income is to increase that gap. And if you're listening to the FI Crash Course, if you're here on episode 6, you know what we mean by the gap. But in case you don't, in case you're just joining us here, between your income and what you spend, that's the gap. So when we have this simple equation here at the FI Guys, how much money you make minus how much money you spend equals that gap. That gap allows you to save, to build wealth, to invest, to reach financial independence. And what we found here at the FI Guys is that too many people go to one extreme or the other. Too many times, if you go online and you go to TikTok, go to YouTube, go to wherever you try to watch your favorite financial people, they're going to talk only about one of the two ways. They say either you have to cut everything or you have to make everything. Where we say it's and. You have to try to cut as much as you can, and you have to try to make as much as you can. Because you can only cut so much before your life starts to look really, really sad. And that's not the goal of financial independence. That's not the goal of being good with your money. If you hate any part of the journey, then you're doing the journey wrong. And we can definitely fix that. So today we're talking about ways to increase your income while you also try to decrease your spending.
Well, I know a lot of people are going to be excited about this. You know, a lot of people want a little bit extra money, and they're not afraid to take on the side hustle. They're not afraid to ask for things at work. They're just not afraid. And a lot of times you get to a point in your life where it's like, I'm tired of being where I am, and I'm tired of letting the fear control me. And if you're at that spot, oh man, you are right. You are in the right place today, because that's what we're getting right into. So I'd love to get started on this one, Chris. This is an exciting one, and this is one that I hope many people can benefit from.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be able to. It's going to be pretty easy on this one. So the way we're going to break this podcast down is first we're going to be talking about our friends who have W-2 jobs. And what W-2 means, it's just a tax code, but basically the way that you're being paid. It means you're a salaried employee, you're an hourly employee, you are working for somebody else for an income. So let's break this down into whether you're early in your career or whether you're midway through your career, because the advice is going to be very different for those two people. So let's talk about how to move the needle on your salary. First, by starting out with those who are just starting out. They're maybe still in school, they're getting out of school, they're somewhere where they are about to get into their career. They're not midway through, they're not at the end, they're just right at the beginning. And with the most important thing I want you to talk about with this when you're getting started is you need to be intentional with your career path. Too many of us of my generation, we're told just go to college, get any degree that you want, and no matter what, it's all going to work out. Well, that was a bull crap. Like none of it was real. We all went to school, we got our degrees, we got all that stuff, and nothing was worth anything. So that means if you choose your degree, if you choose your trade, if you choose your job, you need to make sure that it has a strong earning potential. And yes, there's a place for passion. There is a place for all of these things. But unfortunately, we do live in the real world. And the real world does have physics. And your passions, your hopes, your dreams will not pay the bills. Money pays the bills. So we need to be able to prioritize a starting salary that lets us live the lifestyle earning that we want for our lives. Because too many people think, oh, my passions will be able to support me to own my 3 boats and my 2 houses and my cars. If you want to go the passion route, I'm totally about it. I've created my entire life about that. And in order to do that, you still need to put in the work. And there's always that balance there. So negotiate that first year offer. Yes, even your first job. You need to be willing to sit there and talk with people. And that negotiation is the thing that's going to set you up for the rest of your life. Because you're not just going to negotiate that one time. You're going to have to do it every single time. Dominic, what do you think about for people who are starting out on their journey for their W-2 jobs?
Well, you know, increasing your W-2 earnings is going to be one of the best ways to really increase your income, right? Because I don't know if you guys are listening to this or not, and you've started a business before, but if you have, you would know how difficult it is just to get the ball rolling, and we're not even talking about breaking even. or making a profit just to get started and get everything moving. Right? It's unbelievably challenging if you've never done it before. But at your W-2, you don't have to worry so much if the paycheck is coming in. That's the boss's job, right? I was wondering, Chris, if you could recommend some books um, that could help people, because I know sometimes, you know, on the podcast we're like, yeah, you gotta just ask for a raise and here's some tips and tricks, right? But sometimes we need a little bit more in-depth detail, right? We need the source code from where we get our knowledge. So do you have any books you could recommend on kind of negotiating your salary, or kind of just not having that fear around you? Because to me, it sounds like for most people, myself included, right? It's scary to walk into your boss's office and be like, hey, I need more money. I things are just getting more expensive and my pay rate is not changing. Um, where's my money? I got to get paid in paper. Where's my paper? Right? A little Anchorman 2 reference there. But yeah, do you have any book references for us that could help us in that negotiation phase?
Yeah, of course. I have two books that just off the top of my head that I've read that I've really loved. And one of them was from, I believe, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the other one, the main one that I would recommend is Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. That book is a masterclass in how to negotiate. Do you have any books that you want to add to that list or?
No, I mean Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference is like one of my all-time favorite books. I love that book so much. It's so evil. It's so good. I love it. All that stuff about psychology and communication, and it's almost like being a Jedi. Truthfully, I'm trying to get as close as I can to being a Jedi, where I can just convince people of things. And that book, Never Split the Difference, is so good. I mean, everything from anchoring to, mirroring to, loaded questions. It's just, it knocks it out of the park. I absolutely love that book. And I recommend that one on Audible. Listening to the audiobook on that one as well. A lot of great stuff on that one. But yeah, no, I had to ask. I know you're a big time bookworm and a big time podcast guy. So I always got to ask. And, but yeah, no, let's continue on. Cause like maybe the pay rate isn't on the table, right? Sometimes the bosses are very, I don't want to say greedy, but they've got numbers that they can work with. And there's some stuff they can't work with. Right. So what do we do, Chris, if say the boss is like, look, it's been a tough quarter. We can't move your pay rate. What do you do then?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is there's always ways to negotiate. Most people hear that like, hey, we just can't do it. And they go, oh, okay, I'll just shrink back to my desk and sit there with my head held down high because I lost. But there's always something you can do. If you can't negotiate a raise when it comes to your salary, how about we talk about bonuses? Can we talk about more flexibility? Can I work from home 2 or 3 days? Extra PTO is negotiable. Extra, I don't know, time off, extra time with your kids. There's always something that you can do. I mean, for example, my wife recently, she picked up a new job and they were pretty fixed on the income that they were able to pay her. But what she was able to negotiate was a higher sign-on bonus and more time off a year. I think she actually ended up getting like an extra 2 weeks pay time off a year. And that's all just by pay. And if you really take the math of that, that is straight up that's straight up, if you kind of want to look at it a different way, that's straight up a raise. Yeah. It's a raise in that you get money for less time worked. So it is a raise just in a different way. There's always ways around that. And that's more for people in the mid-career. When you're in your mid-career, you always need to be negotiating. And you can negotiate for anything like we just talked about. For people in the mid-career, I think the most important thing that they don't do is they don't document their wins. And they don't schedule regular check-ins with their managers to highlight their results. And there's a fine balance here of highlighting our results and being cocky and just trying to like show off all the things that you do. If you're at work and you're doing good work, it is important that your boss knows that you're doing good work. That doesn't mean that you walk up to them every single day with a spreadsheet of like, this is how much better I am than everyone else. But you want to be able to be your own advocate, be your own cheerleader, and let people know the things that you're doing around the office and how important you are to the flow. Because too often in work, bosses or those in charge just kind of see things humming along, but they don't see the minute details that everyone is doing to allow things to hum along. So our big thing is if you're starting out, you need to be intentional. You need to make sure that the job that you're going after is a job that's going to be there. It's a job that's worth fighting for. And I know with the advent of AI, that's getting harder and harder and harder. I understand that. So what I think when it comes to AI, it's try to be a jack of all trades, try to learn as much as you can and integrate yourself with AI to be able to understand it so you can be someone who is special, who has your unique knowledge, your unique tool set, and can use AI to leverage it to get better. And if you're mid-career, you need to continue to negotiate to get better. And most importantly, you need to be willing to walk away at some point, because it's very unfortunate. But nowadays, staying with the same company for 30, 40 years for a pension and a nice life and retirement, that's not the way things go anymore. We got rid of most pensions. Most companies know that they are not responsible to you, even though you may be as responsible as you can be to them. So sometimes the best way to get a raise if you're midway in your career is to jump ship. Because what we've seen is that people can often negotiate a 5 to 10 to 20% increase in their salary by being able to go to a different company. Where if you stay with your own job or the old job, you'll be lucky to get 2%, 3%, 1%. It's sad that our grandma and grandpa's advice of sticking with the same company that is loyal to you, that as much as you're loyal to them, doesn't work out. And in the real world, the world of physics, the world of cause and effect, that's just the way things are. So let's deal with the way that the world is, not with the way the world ought to be.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think you're spot on with all of that. I think it's coming to a point now where all of us are going to have to learn how to be entrepreneurs. We're going to have to be business owners. We're going to have to learn how to be marketers. We're going to have to learn how to be the one who executes, right? I was in a job interview recently, and he said something to me that I was like a little bit taken back by. And he's like, "You seem like a very tech savvy guy." And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, the only person who would ever say tech savvy is probably my father, and he's 68, right? Yeah, I'd say I'm a tech savvy guy. I mean, isn't everybody? It's like, yeah, yesterday I was working on automation. Yeah, I use AI every day. Yeah, of course. Isn't everybody? And the reality of the fact is, no, everybody isn't using AI. And if they are using it, they're not using it at a high level. And the way I see it is, AI is like the dawn of the internet. You might know an aunt, an uncle, a dad, a grandpa, right, who never really got the internet. What's the purpose of it? What does it do, right? I'm not saying you have to know how it works. I'm not saying you have to know how these large language models work, but it's basically showing up to a fight and one guy has a bazooka and the other guy is just bare knuckle. It's like it's not a fair fight. So you really learn to be great with AI because it's not going anywhere. We've opened Pandora's box and there's no putting it back in the box. So yeah, try and be as useful as possible. But I like what you were saying, Chris. Not just be as useful as possible to make the company more money so you can stay at the same pay rate, so you can slave away every day. It's like, no, make yourself more useful and irreplaceable and let them know that, hey, I'm one of the ones that's pushing the ship forward. I'm not the one of the ones dragging, right? I'm not the anchor. I'm the propeller. So I absolutely love what you were saying, Chris. But to be honest, I'm excited to get onto the side hustle stuff a little bit later. But what else do you have for this segment?
We'll get there in a second, I promise. But this is one of the most important parts of the podcast right now, and that's how to become raise-worthy. We have 7 key steps we're going to break down right now for those who are in the W-2 job, who are just starting out in their career or are mid-career. How do we make sure that we can get a raise every single year? So this is what I used to use when I was working my W-2 jobs, and it worked very effectively for me. So let's go ahead and break all that down. Number 1, you need to know what excellence looks like. And that means sitting down with your manager, sitting down even with their manager, and getting crystal clear on expectations, growth paths, and what success means in your role. There was a question that I used to ask at the end of every interview. There's actually 3 questions, but one of the questions was, if you were to hire me today, in 6 months, what would I have to do? Or what would the company have to look like for you to look back and be like, man, I'm so happy that I hired Chris today? And if you ask that question, they're going to give you a roadmap of like, oh, if this was happening, this was happening, this was happening, then we'd be looking really, really good. And by doing that, that leads you into the second thing that you have to do. You have to set measurable goals with your boss. And just by asking that question, they help to do that. And then once you set those measurable goals, that helps to build buy-in with your boss. And then it helps to give you qualifications for what crushing it looks like and what failing looks like. But it also gives buy-in from your boss to show like this person has taken themselves to another level. They want to know how can they grow and specific numbers of how to get there rather than just showing up for a paycheck. What do you think of parts 1 and 2 before we get to the other 7?
You know, while you were preaching, bestowing us the knowledge that we need to create a better life, I was doing some research, and it turns out that only 37% of US workers have ever asked for a raise. Ever. And of those 37%, 70% of them get some form of a raise, like we were talking about earlier, either in payment or, in benefits or some sort of compromise. So definitely take that into account, right? Not everybody on your floor is going to be asking for a raise. It's kind of scary, right? The big bad boss, HR, it's scary. So just know that if you do muster up the courage to finally ask for what you feel you're owed, there's a 70% chance that you're going to get something out of it. And I like those odds. I really like those odds.
Yeah, I like that too. And all it takes is just the courage to go and do it. And the worst thing they can do is say no. I don't think there's not very many times you say, hey, I want to raise it. It depends on how you do it. If you walk in there and say, give me a 40% raise or I walk, there's a good chance you're going to be walking.
Yeah.
But if you go in there with reasonable skills, with these 7 keys, insights that we're about to go over, the rest of the 5 that we have, and you walk in there, the worst thing they can say is not right now. But no one's going to say, if you use what we are going to teach you, no one's going to say like, how dare you ask, get the hell out, you're done. And if they do, then you don't want to work for that company. So let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is probably one of the easiest ones that people go like, yeah, of course, that makes complete sense. And that's be likable and be reliable. People award those they enjoy working with. Be someone they can trust and enjoy seeing your success. And it's just as easy as that. How difficult is it to just be a good person? It's not that difficult. So please do that. Show up to work. You can't be the guy that shows up or the gal that shows up once a week, shows up 15 minutes late every single day and says, I'm crushing it. You have to be reliable. You have to go with the expectations of what the job sets for you. Number 4, you need to network internally and externally. And that means you have to build relationships and helpful connections within your organization and outside of your organizations. Relationships equals opportunities. And I'm not saying be this sleazy salesperson that's going from person to person asking, what can you do for me? How can I help? What can you do for me? What can you do for me? You have to ask, what can I do for you? You want to be able to fill that cup before you get thirsty. Because whether it's an economic disaster where everyone loses their jobs, the person that's going to have the easiest time is the person with that strong network. There's that old saying, your network is your net worth. I don't think that's 100% true, but there is some portion of that is reasonable and does work out, because being able to have that network to call on, given that it's real relationships, not just transactional relationships, can be a huge advantage when you're either looking to stay with an organization, jump within an organization, or jump out of an organization to a new one. That network will be a lifeline for you. Number 5, level up your communication and your presentation skills. It's not just what you know, it's how well you can sell it. There's an old quote from Morgan Housel that I liked, which is, the best story wins. Yeah, you can be the most technically proficient person. You can be the smartest guy or gal on your floor. But if you can't tell a compelling story, if you can't communicate with other people around you, it doesn't mean anything. We all knew that guy or person in school who was super smart, just the best bookworm in the world. They could recite any information, but couldn't speak worth a damn. It's very difficult to get through this world without being able to tell a compelling story, without being able to communicate. Dominic, before we get on to our last two, do you have anything to add?
I think you're spot on, right? And to get better at communication, it's going to take time. It's going to take practice, right? There's this method that I heard that it was really good, where it was like, record yourself speaking for 5 minutes, right? And then give it a day. Give it a day, and you listen to it. You press play on it, you put the phone down, you just listen to it, right? And you give it another day. And then you press play the next day, you're just looking at it on mute, right? And then the next day you look at it and listen to it at the same time and give your honest feedback. And, you can only get better by getting better and actually doing it, right? You can read How to Win Friends and Influence People. You can read Never Split the Difference. You can read any other book out there. You can watch every TED Talk on how to be a better speaker. But if you're not actually speaking, you're not actually getting better. I can read all the books on how to be a better runner, but if I'm not running, I'm not improving physically, maybe mentally, but you got to get better in the real world. And I know that's tough sometimes, right? Do mock interviews, do mock negotiations, right? Become more friendly and really try your best to free yourself from the mental cage you've built and the mental prison. Because I believe we're all living in prisons we built. And at your job, you might think that, you're in a prison and you're trapped and this and that. But really, it's not that deep. You're in control of your own life. If you want to sell everything and move to Europe, do it. You have the ability, you have the free will, right? If you want to, blow up your car, I wouldn't recommend it. Not sure why that's the first one that came to mind. I love my car, but you have free will. Also kind of illegal, but you have free will, right? So you have to take control of your own life and stop living in these prisons that you've created for yourself and get over the fear that's holding you back. Maybe it's public speaking, right? I know a lot of people who are afraid of public speaking, right? I promise you, great speakers will never judge you for taking that first speech. You're never going to be judged by someone who's doing better than you, only by people who are worse than you. And there's that quote that I absolutely love, and it goes like, let me think of it. I believe it's by, it's the opinions of the people that matter. That's what counts. But if you don't matter, then it doesn't matter, right? If they don't have your phone number, then it shouldn't be a big issue. If they do have your phone number, well, then it might be a bigger issue, right? Then it's constructive criticism. And I'll look for that quote while Chris goes on to our next point. But yeah, that's my kind of 2 cents for that one, Chris.
Yeah, I think too many people, they go through life saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this, I can't do that. But in truth, if you really think about it, it's not that you can't do it, it's that you don't want to do it. Yeah. I can't ask for a raise. No, I don't want to ask for a raise. But the words that we use have power. So be truthful with yourself. Just say, I don't want to do it. That's understandable. That's okay. But don't say you can't do it. So, and when it comes to negotiation, one pro tip, now that we have AI, is it used to be hard to do mock interviews. It used to be kind of hard to do negotiation training because you had to go and find a person who was willing to do it with you and be willing to be embarrassed. Well, now you can go to ChatGPT, you can go to Claude, you can go to Gemini, and you can prompt it. Say, hey, I want you to be my boss, and I'm going to ask for a raise, and I want you to challenge me on it. And you just have to do the voice recognition one. You guys both talk back and forth. You can do that from the comfort of your home where you're not being judged. And it will coach you on how to win the argument with itself. Let's move on to point number 6. You need to continue to sharpen your skills. Like we said earlier, you need to build a unique talent stack. We at the Fi Guys are all about the aggregation of marginal gains, 1% better every day. So you have to learn complementary skills that make you stand out. That what makes you an individual. That's what makes you one of one. The guy or gal that knows AI, that can do the marketing, that can talk with executives, that can be a public speaker, that can make sales. That's what's going to make you the propeller. That's what's going to make you unable to be fired or let go because you are the most important person based off all of the skills that you have. But if you're just Jimmy around the corner who can only do one thing in Excel, well, guess what? That he's probably on his way out pretty soon. So don't be that person. Be the person that can do a bunch of things. And number 7, this is very important. make sure you know your value, because your job's job is to make sure that you don't know your value. Their goal is to underpay as much as they can. That is what capitalism is about at its core. So don't assume your boss knows what you've accomplished. You have to show them. You have to make sure that you know your value and that your organization knows your value. Here's a big pro tip for these 7. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just need to be the most consistent person, the most useful person, and the most intentional person. Intelligence is not the main driver here. It's consistency. It's showing up every day, trying to get a little bit better. Before we get on to evaluating your market worth, Dominic, do you have anything to say before we close out this section?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have the quote here, and it's from Dr. Seuss, and it goes, "Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind." So that was the quote that I wanted to kind of say a few numbers back, but yeah, I mean, this is a very important podcast, right? This is a very important time to think about what you need to do to better yourself, because everything we're talking about here affects your whole life. So I hope you take it seriously, and I hope you take some action.
Please do that. And this is another big one for W-2 employees. It's evaluating your market worth. Many people right now are being underpaid. And you won't know if you're being underpaid unless you do your research. Thankfully, now there are many laws that are coming out there for people to be able to know what they're getting paid, and transparency laws are becoming more and more common. Because for too long, and unfortunately it seems like it's going back that way, that companies had all the power and individuals were completely nothing. But now we have tools. We have tools like Glassdoor, like Levels FYI, Salary.com, LinkedIn Salary Insights that allows you to see what other people in your group are getting paid. Because without that knowledge, you're going to think that you're right where you should be. But with the knowledge saying that other people in other organizations are getting paid more than you, or even other people in your organization are getting paid more than you, that gives you the ability to go ahead and communicate for yourself, to be your own advocate. Because if you're hoping your boss is going to be your advocate, I'm going to tell you they will not. They will not without being prompted to. So that means you need to talk to your boss. You need to talk to recruiters, even if that means casually, because they can help you gauge your demand and your skill set. Even now, as a person who owns their own business, I still speak with recruiters occasionally to figure out what's going on in the market. What should I know and not know? In case anything ever goes wrong with my business, what skills do I need to have to be able to jump back in as quickly as possible? And that means that when you are negotiating, when you are looking for how much you are worth, when you go in there and you talk to your boss, if that's what you need to do, you need to make sure that you don't accept the first offer. You need to negotiate. You need to learn that negotiation is part of the process. Too many of us, we sit there and we takes hours, days, weeks, years to muster up the courage to walk into the office and just ask the question, can I get a raise? And they go, fine, here's your 0.5% raise. And you walk out going, yeah, I won. But there was so much more that you left on the table. You went in there, you did the hardest part. You got started. And there was so much more you could have gone for.
I think you're spot on with that. And that's the dance when it comes to negotiating. You never know how much they're willing to give up, but you do know how much you're willing to gain, right? Any inch is a win, true. But that's why it's so important to role play and have mock negotiations and become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's a great skill. And honestly, that might even be the undertone of today's podcast, is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because whether you're in an interview, whether you're in a job trying to get higher pay, or you're starting your own side hustle, you're going to have to learn how to be very uncomfortable sometimes and be okay with that. And not just put on a half smile, but act as if you're at 100%.
100% agreed. So let's get on to your favorite part of this podcast, on the side hustle part, exploring additional income streams. And before we get to that, I want to just say that side hustles are not just trendy. They're extremely powerful. Even a side hustle that only brings in $100 a week, well, that's $5,200 a year. If you invest that $5,200 of additional income at 7% over 35 years, that's $663,000 that you can use towards your retirement, towards buying a new house, towards an amazing trip with your spouse and your kids and whoever else you want to bring on that. That's a lot of money. The point of a side hustle isn't to work yourself into burnout, but to create options and flexibility. And just like Dominic talked about earlier in the podcast, it's also a way to explore, to grow, to be intentional with your life, to try to create your dreams rather than just creating somebody else's dreams like you do when you work for somebody else. So I want to talk about 3 proven methods to help find your side hustle idea, because that's what I find the hardest thing about a side hustle is it's where do I even start? I don't want to do Uber. I don't want to do Uber Eats. I don't want to do Lyft. I wanted to create my own thing, but I don't even know where to begin. Yeah. So we're going to give you 3 proven methods that helps you find your side hustle ideas that both Dominic and I have used. And we're also going to give you some examples. So our first proven method is called the intersection method. Yes. Just like an intersection of a street, this crosses a few different things. What are you good at? What do you love? And who do you know? An example of this might be maybe you're a marketing professional for your normal job who loves fitness and you have friends who are in the industry. Could you offer marketing services to those small fitness brands? Very, very simple. So again, you have to look at what are you good at in this regards. I'm really good at marketing. I do marketing proven. And I love marketing. That's something that I'm good at. I've been doing it for years. But who do I know that does it? Oh, I know that I have all these friends because I'm in the fitness industry as well, or I go to CrossFit, I do whatever, and I have all these friends in it. There it is. There's your easy job right there. And that could produce some pretty serious income. Don't worry about the taxes. Don't worry about all of this other stuff. All of that is very, very simple to figure out. And I promise you in the 5 Crash Course, we will teach you all of those things. But too many people worry about the finances, the legal, the taxes, all the stuff. And all of that is excuses to not getting started.
Exactly that. An excuse. Gotta be careful with those excuses, guys. Gotta be careful with those. No, I think this one's really interesting. Because oftentimes, like you said, when you think side hustle, you think, well, maybe I mow my neighbor's yard. Maybe I do DoorDash. Maybe I do Uber, right? Maybe even TaskRabbit. But I love this one. I love this. Figuring out, it's like, well, yeah, like I'm already good at this. Let me just continue doing that, right? And what's so interesting is sometimes the side hustle turns into an actual business, a full-fledged business. Like you were saying, Chris, with the marketing. Like, yeah, I just started marketing for little boutiques here in my area, and because normally where I work, we do national accounts, we do State Farm, we do big accounts, but this little mom and pop shops have no one to represent them. And then, bing, boom, 3 years down the line, it's like you've got your own marketing firm helping small town America. It's like, oh, I never knew that could turn into something. So you never know what a side hustle, and I use quotations, a side hustle can really turn into. It can turn into something great, and you might not even recognize it or realize it.
Thank you for that observation. The second proven strategy that we have to find your side hustle idea is the find friction in everyday life method. And this just means that you solve an annoyance that everyone that you talk to complains about. Yeah. So an example for this one that I remember is busy professionals often don't have time to meal prep. So can you start a healthy meal delivery service as a side hustle? Can you go to Costco, rip up some chicken, throw that inside there, and then give it to somebody else? Like, I'm not saying do that, but there are ways to go around getting to make money if you have to. I always think about this. I grew up in San Diego, and when I was in San Diego, there were the tamale ladies that would walk around. There was the guys who would walk around with different drinks. Like, you don't have to do that, but they made money doing what they were doing because they weren't afraid to get started. They knew that it was survival, and this is what I have to do. And they went out there and they made money every day to send back to their families to be able to survive themselves. What could you do today if you had to make $100? And finding friction in everyday life is a great place to start because you know that everyone is dealing with the exact same issues.
100%. 100%. And I think it also helps, like what you were kind of saying, is to change the framework in which you see it, right? If the guy on the you know, walking down the street selling tamales or, you know, XYZ, right? Their why is, well, I got to make this money so I can send my money back home so that my kids can eat, right? And maybe it's not that dire for you. Like, well, yeah, I already have a W-2. It's fine. Bills are paid. I just want a little extra. If you operate it as, I just want a little extra, well, you're just going to get a little extra, right? But if it's like, no, I need to make 100, 200, $300 this week or this day, right? You're going to come in with a much more intense mindset, right? So be careful how you set your mind. Be careful how you set that engine that keeps running, right? Because it can be the difference between everything, and it usually is. It usually is. Yeah, I love to find the friction every day. And the meal prep one, I actually really like the meal prep idea. I actually really like that. You know, from like a lot of my friends are really great cooks, right? They're really great cooks. So it's like, dude, hell yeah, I'd pay you $100 for the week for 5 meals, dude. Hell yeah, dude. That'd be awesome, right? So I love that. I love that. Or maybe you're a mom, right? And you've been home cooking your meals all your life for your kids, but your kids moved out. Well, doesn't mean you have to stop that, right? You can sell those meals as well, right? So there's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of options. That's part of, I think that's why I like the find your friction one. Um, one of the, I mean, to be honest, I say it's like one of my favorites, and then we get to the next one, and I'm like, this one's good. This one's even better. And looking at the notes, I see which one's next, and I love that one too. But yeah, so I would definitely, if you guys have any ideas for finding friction in your everyday life, feel free to drop them down in the comments. Leave them in the comments. Let us know what is something that you can find in everyday life that can help other people. And really, that's what a business is all about. It's about helping people. So, how can you help someone today? But yeah, let's get on to number 3, Chris. I'm excited for this next one.
Yeah, Rip, Pivot, and Jam. This one's one of my favorites. This is what I built a lot of my businesses around, and that is borrow a proven model and add your own spin. So we all know of Birchbox or different boxes. My wife gets Birchbox, so I know of Birchbox, and that is a subscription that works for beauty. They send different beauty supplies every single month, and people love them.
Interesting.
So can you create your own subscription box? Maybe that's for outdoor gear or for dog lovers or for hobbyists of some weird, obscure hobby that you love to do. Can you create those things for yourself? And again, the big thing with all of these is you need to be able to create marketing. You need to be able to create ways of getting your name out there. But I'm not saying you have to go from where you are today with this idea to how can I launch it to be as big as Amazon? All you need to do is see how can I go from here to one person knowing about it? Can I talk to my friends? Can I talk to my family? Can I don't know, go to an event and just let people know, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you have any interest in that? That's one of the best ways to see if your idea has legs. Because too many people in life, when they think of a business, they'll go through everything. They'll have a 10-year business plan. They'll have all this stuff ready to go without ever asking somebody, is this something that you guys want? Is this something that the world needs? And the nice thing about the 3 methods that we talked about, the intersection method, the find your friction, and the rip, pivot, and jam method, is that they all work. They've been proven to work, and they work because people are looking for that help. Therefore, your marketing is basically taken care of. You just need to now put yourself in front of them. And in our next segment, we're going to be talking about maximizing your side hustle. But before we get there, Dominic, do you have anything to say?
I think the rip, pivot, and jam method is the most common one, right? Especially when you feel like every idea is already taken. But I love what you were saying, right? About the subscription box. I mean, there was this subscription that I thought was so interesting where every month they send you a letter and it's like a little like murder mystery and you kind of have to figure it out. And I was like, man, that is so, I mean, ChatGPT that thing and you're golden. I'm like, that's just a sweaty business model. I love that. I love that. I was like, man, I that's so brilliant. And I'm sure there's many ways you could do it, but the more you kind of shift your mindset from a consumer to an entrepreneur, you start to see that business is all around you, right? Business is all around you. It's unbelievable how much business is out there. I mean, take a second. If you're in your car, if you're, say you're in your house, in your office, in your room, right? I'm here in my office right now recording the podcast, right? And I look around, it's like, oh, I mean, the paint on the wall is a separate company that just sells paint. The wood in the wall, lumber, right? The insulation, the fan, right? Where did the fan come from? That's a business. Who supplied the light bulbs and the wires to the fan? That's another business, right? Who installed the fan? Another business, right? And that's there's probably 1,000 businesses in this room because of everything I have, right? The microphone, right? The keyboard, the phones, right? Everything, carpet. There's so many businesses out there, so don't get stuck on there's nothing for me, right? And actually, I was talking to Chris about this, and we were talking about, I don't know if this would be a version of side hustle, but it's side hustle adjacent, right? And it was actually buying a business. A lot of the older generation, the baby boomers, they're getting to the age where, well, they want to retire, right? And a lot of them have small businesses and their heirs don't want it. So they're just going to close up shop. 40 years of serving the community, gone in an instant. But what if you could help them? And remember, the key word is to help, right? That's what a business does. What if you were to help them? What if you were to come into their business and say, hey, I would love to take over your business. Here could be a down payment, or we can negotiate terms that works for you. Maybe a royalty deal for the first couple of years, or, till you pass or something. There's a lot of opportunity out there, guys. And I don't want you to get stuck in the gloom that, the world is ending. Politics is right in my face. It is my life. And everything is bad and everything is, why try? Like, no. Statistically, the earth will keep going around the sun, with or without you, with or without whoever's president, no matter what's going on. So it's always important to take every day and treat it like, let's make this the best day ever. All right, let's do our best work today. But I want to keep going because this podcast is starting to run a little bit long. So let's get on to that next one, Chris. I believe that those were the big three, correct? The intersection method, the find your friction, and the rip, pivot, and jam. Sounds like a nice little dance move back in the 60s. But those are the three proven methods. And do we have anything else? I think we have one more segment, right, Chris?
We do, then our action step. But Dominic, I think you added a fourth one that I didn't even think to talk about, which is buy a business. Maybe what we'll do after the 5 crash courses, we'll create a separate podcast about how to go about doing that and what things to look for and not look for. But that'll be coming in the future. Segment 7, maximizing your side hustle. There's something that I really want people to know. It's that there is something for everyone's schedule and everyone's skill set and ways to be able to produce additional income. If you can only work virtual, you can do freelancing, you can do coaching, you can do digital production. If you want to do in person, you can do delivery, you can do tutoring, you can do events. Every skill set, every schedule has the way to go ahead and make money. The thing that's stopping everyone from doing that is themselves. The fear that I can't do it. And you're right. If you don't think you can do it, you won't do it. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you are exactly right. Henry Ford was right when he said that. The biggest thing when it comes to creating a side hustle is test and reiterate. The goal isn't perfection, it's momentum. Profitable is so much better than perfection. But so many of us are so afraid to let our beautiful ideas leave our heads and go into the real world. Because in the real world, that's where our ideas get tested and that's where our ideas can fail. So don't let profitable be the enemy of perfection. You need to get started. You need to get started messy and you'll figure it along the way. I can't tell you how many times I've started different things where we think like this is the goal. Once we start it, it's going to go to the moon, and it doesn't. And then you just pivot, you get 1% better. And then eventually you find your niche that works really, really well. And it's hard to go about doing that. But the hardest thing, it's your mindset. That's what's holding you back. So small streams of income can snowball over time. Just like we said earlier, $100 a week over 35 years equals $66,300 if you invest it. That's not small potatoes in any way, shape, or form. So Dominic, before we get on to our action step of the week and close out, do you have anything to say?
Alex Hormozy, an entrepreneur I follow, I really enjoy. He made a video about how he was talking with one of his sales guys, and young guy, 28, we'll say, but out of shape, right? And he's like, "Hey, dude, like, why don't I see you in the gym?" And he's like, I'll get to it. I'm gonna get to it." And Alex said, it's never going to be easier than it is right now. So either do it now or accept the fact that you're going to be fat for the rest of your life. And I equate that to your income. Can you live with yourself? Can you live with this idea of your life if you're not afraid to challenge it? Are you okay staying the same at the same income forever? If you don't ask for a raise, well, it's probably not going to come. So I guess it's a conversation of, are you okay staying the same pay the rest of your life? I hope not, because it's not getting cheaper out here. But also, you deserve more. And I hope that you understand that. I hope you feel that. I hope you believe that. I think that's one of the things we didn't talk about today. Maybe we'll talk about on Friday's episode, but a lot of people don't believe they deserve their self-worth is in the dumps, whether that's been conditioned from their parents, from their teachers, or maybe even their boss.
Yeah, write that down. Let's talk about that on Five Friday Feedback,
sure,
because that sounds like a fun philosophical discussion which is all Five Friday Feedback's about.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our action step this week. And this is a big one. I want you to choose one of the following and execute on it. Number one, you can ask your manager for a raise or a performance feedback if you haven't been performing. That way you can know what steps you need to take to ask for that raise in the future. Number two, you can reach out to a recruiter in your field to make sure you're being paid what you're worth. Number three, you can launch a mini side hustle. Post one service or offer on your network. That could be social media, that could be friends and family, that could be putting up a poster around town. Or number four, you can list your skills and your passions to brainstorm your intersection method idea, or your rip pivot jam idea, or your, what was the last one? Or your find friction in everyday life every day. Or we can buy a business. Yeah. I don't care, but you need to do something. You don't need to earn six figures overnight, but you do need to take the first step towards owning your income potential. So in today's podcast, we talked about how to increase your income if you're W-2, just getting started out midway to your career. We also talked about 7 key ways to grow your income. We talked about ways to evaluate yourself in the market to make sure that you're getting paid what you're worth. And we explored additional side hustle ideas and the income potential that those can produce, even if they're not the next Amazon, even if they're not the next Uber. So Dominic, would you please close us out, and we will see all of our listeners back on Five Friday Feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, that's going to be it for our episode today. Remember, are you willing to be uncomfortable for a season if it means building the freedom and the life you choose? I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, please leave a like and a follow if you are new here. We always recommend that you share it with a friend because, let's be honest, it's always better to go on any journey ever with someone else. So that being said, I'm Dom. He's Chris. We're the Fi Guys. And we're going to see you on Friday for a special episode. As always, hope you have an amazing week and see you then. Alrighty, guys.
Later.
Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.